Welcome to another episode of PPL Pod. Think back to the early 2000s for a second.
Oh, man, yeah. A very specific era.
Right, and when you picture the origins of a global pop-punk icon from that time, you probably imagine this very specific narrative.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely think of someone grinding it out in these grimy, sweaty underground clubs.
Exactly, like a rebellious upbringing in a massive city, just completely steeped in the local punk rock scene from day one.
Right, it's the classic origin story we've basically been conditioned to expect. We assume all that angst was forged in a garage somewhere.
Yeah, playing to crowds of like 10 people until someone finally noticed them. But what if I told you the actual story completely shatters that assumption?
It really does. It's wild.
I mean, how does a girl who grew up singing country covers in a bookstore, and who, by the way, played right wing on a boys' ice hockey team, end up becoming the absolute global face of 2000s angst and punk rebellion?
It is a massive, almost incomprehensible contradiction. And honestly, that contradiction is exactly what makes the subject of today's deep dive so endlessly fascinating to untangle.
Today, we are exploring the true story of Avril Lavigne. Now, you almost certainly know her for the neckties, the tank tops, and those massive generation-defining hits like Complicated.
And Skater Boy, obviously.
For sure. But her actual story, when you look closely at our sources for this deep dive, is this really complex evolution of a young woman fighting tooth and nail to control her own narrative.
Yeah, especially in a hyper-manufactured music industry.
Exactly. So we're going to explore how she inadvertently became the so-called anti-Britney, how she survived a deeply debilitating health crisis, sparked one of the wildest internet conspiracy theories of all time.
Oh, the conspiracy theory is my favorite part.
It's so bizarre, and, ultimately how she influenced an entirely new generation of alt-pop artists.
It's really a masterclass in constant, unapologetic reinvention. And what's remarkable is just how much agency she demanded from a system that usually strips young artists of exactly that.
Absolutely. Looking at her rapid, genre-shifting rise, it's honestly a case of musical whiplash.
Right.
It's like showing up to a rodeo and somehow accidentally winning an international skateboarding competition.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
But to understand the mechanics of how we actually get there, we need to look at the environment that shaped her. So we're starting in Napanee, Ontario.
Right, which at the time we're talking about a population of around maybe 5,000 people.
Tiny. And she was raised in a strict, evangelical Christian family. I mean, she was literally singing Jesus Loves Me on the way home from church when she was just 2 years old.
Which sets such a specific foundation,
Yeah.
Her family actively supported her musical inclinations,
Yeah.
but within a very defined lane.
Right. Church music.
Exactly. Her dad, who played bass at their church, actually converted their basement into a studio for her.
What?
He bought her a microphone, a drum kit, keyboards, guitars.
That's pretty supportive, honestly.
Very supportive. But the music she was drawn to performing early on, and this is crucial context for this deep dive, wasn't punk rock. It was country music.
I mean, she's performing at local country fairs. She's singing Garth Brooks, The Chicks, and Shania Twain.
Shania Twain being the key figure there.
Oh, completely. Because if you think about the late 90s, Shania Twain was the absolute blueprint for a country artist successfully crossing over into massive global pop stardom.
Right. She proved it could be done.
And that ambition was clearly rubbing off on a young Avril. Because in 1999, when she is just 15 years old, she wins a radio contest to actually perform on stage with Shania Twain.
Which is just huge for a kid.
Yeah, and not at a local fair either, at the Corel Center in Ottawa, in front of an audience of 20,000 people.
Wow. They sang Twain's song, What Made You Say That? And Lavigne reportedly turned to Shania right then and there and told her flat out that she was going to be a famous singer.
Just told her to her face.
Yep. You can see that raw, unvarnished ambition forming very early on. She wasn't intimidated by the 20,000 people. She felt she belonged in front of them.
That is wild confidence for a 15-year-old.
It really is. And industry people were starting to notice that specific spark. Later that same year, she was discovered by her first professional manager, a guy named Cliff Fabry.
And wait until you hear the location of this discovery.
Yeah, that's great.
She was singing country covers at a Chapters bookstore in Kingston, Ontario.
From a Canadian bookstore to a record deal. It literally sounds like a movie script.
It does. So Fabry immediately gets to work, sending out VHS tapes of her home performances. Eventually, a Canadian management firm gets a hold of one of these basement tapes.
Right.
They set her up in New York with a producer in the summer of 2000. And this ultimately leads to an audition for L.A. Reid.
Who's the head of Arista Records, an absolute titan of the
Yeah.
music industry at the time.
Exactly. So she goes into his Manhattan studio, sings for like 15 minutes, and he is so blown away, he signs this 15-year-old on the spot.
It's incredible.
We are talking about a $1.25 million deal for 2 albums, plus a $900,000 publishing advance.
The financial scale of that deal is staggering. I mean, to give you some context on what a $900,000 publishing advance actually means.
Yeah, break that down, because that sounds like a lot of money just for songs.
It means the label isn't just buying her voice. A publishing advance is a direct investment in songwriting. They're betting nearly $1 million that the songs tied to her name are going to generate massive radio and sales royalties.
So the pressure is just on from day one.
Immense, immediate pressure to manufacture global hits. She actually ended up leaving high school with her parents' support to focus entirely on delivering on that investment.
Okay, I have to stop us right here. Because looking at this timeline, I am incredibly suspicious of the official narrative.
I don't blame you.
If she was a country-singing evangelical church girl who was essentially scooped up by corporate record executives in New York and handed over $2 million, how on earth does she suddenly emerge as a skater punk?
It's the multi-million-dollar question.
Right. It sounds exactly like the classic industry playbook. Was her entire pop-punk image just brilliant, manufactured pop marketing cooked up in a boardroom because the jump from Shania Twain to skateboards just doesn't compute naturally?
That is the exact skepticism you should have. It's the crucial question of her early career. To understand the mechanism of that transition, you have to look at her struggle in New York right after she signed that massive deal.
So New York wasn't working out.
Not at all. Arista paired her with this revolving door of top-tier pop songwriters and producers trying to forge her sound. Think of it like a really talented actor being completely miscast in a movie.
Like trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly. No matter how good the script is or how much money the studio throws at it, if the role doesn't fit the person, the audience simply won't buy it. The songs they were coming up with in New York just didn't fit her vibe, her vocal tone, or her personality.
It was a stylistic dead end. So the label is panicking because their $2 million investment is stalling.
Oh, big time. It was only when they decided to send her to Los Angeles in May of 2001 that things finally clicked. She was introduced to a production team called The Matrix.
And what did The Matrix do differently than those New York executives?
They stopped trying to force her into a pre-existing pop mold. They actually looked at who she was outside of the vocal booth.
Oh, interesting.
Because while she did have those country performance roots, her actual lived reality in high school back in Napanee was very different. She naturally fit in with the skater clique.
The hockey playing.
Exactly. She played boys' ice hockey. She wore baggy clothes. She hung out at skate parks. When she got to L.A., The Matrix just tapped into that teenage reality.
So they just took who she already was and amplified it?
Basically. Musically, they swapped out the acoustic country twang for distorted power chords. They shifted the lyrical focus from generic pop romance to teenage frustration.
I love that.
They essentially figured out how to package the male-dominated frat punk energy of bands like Blink-182 and filter through a female teenage perspective.
So it wasn't some 50-year-old executive in a suit handing her a skateboard and a necktie and saying, wear this. It was the producers finally finding the correct musical vehicle to express a side of her that already existed.
Precisely.
And that vehicle becomes her breakthrough debut album, Let Go. Released in June 2002, she's just 17 years old. And it doesn't just do well, it completely reshapes the pop landscape.
Complicated, and Skater Boy absolutely take over the world. By the end of 2002, Let Go made her the best-selling female artist of the entire year.
That is insane for a debut album.
It went on to sell over 16 million copies worldwide. It actually holds the record as the best-selling album of the 21st century by a Canadian artist.
Think about the music you were probably listening to in 2002. You likely had Complicated stuck in your head on a loop, but you probably didn't realize it was being sung by a girl who legally couldn't even buy a lottery ticket yet. She was completely dominating. But it wasn't just the music, it was the cultural vacuum she filled. Because if you look at the late 90s and early 2000s, pop music was entirely defined by hyper-choreographed, polished, and often hyper-sexualized acts.
Oh, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, NSYNC.
Exactly. And then suddenly, here comes this teenager in baggy pants and a men's necktie, refusing to do choreography and just standing at a mic stand playing guitar.
And because of that stark contrast, the press immediately went into a frenzy trying to categorize her. They crowned her the pop-punk princess and, more pointedly, the anti-Britney.
They just needed a box to put her in.
Right. They desperately wanted her to be the poster child for the angry rebel fighting against manufactured pop.
But based on what we just discussed about her deep ambition to be a massive pop star like Shania Twain, did she even want those labels? Like, did she want to be the anti-Britney?
Not at all. What's fascinating is how actively she rejected those exact labels. In interviews, she would explicitly push back, saying, "I am so not a punk or an angry rebel."
Good for her.
Yeah, the anti-Britney label was slapped on her because of her tomboy style and headstrong attitude. But she hated being defined purely in opposition to someone else. She wanted to be Avril, not the anti-someone else.
Which makes total sense.
And you see her exert her agency in a really visually striking way. At the absolute peak of the necktie trend in late 2002, a trend she single-handedly started globally, she consciously stopped wearing them.
Wait, really? Just cold turkey?
Yep. She told the press it felt like she was wearing a costume. She realized the visual gimmick was starting to overshadow the music, so she just killed the trend.
That is incredibly bold for a 17-year-old. I mean, your label finds a marketing hook that is making them millions, and you just refuse to wear it anymore because it feels inauthentic.
It takes a lot of guts.
It really does. Which leads perfectly into her next era. Because once you've had an explosive debut, the biggest tension in the music industry becomes, how do you follow it up? How do you prove you aren't just a one-hit wonder or a label puppet?
Well, you assert your independence by changing the formula. In 2004, she releases her second album, Under My Skin, and the shift is palpable.
Yeah, it was a totally different vibe.
The neckties and skater shoes are gone, replaced by black tutus, combat boots, and a much more angst-ridden gothic image. But the mechanism of change wasn't just visual, it was deeply musical.
The sound got way heavier.
Much heavier. The production is noticeably darker. She leans heavily into post-grunge and early emo sounds.
She basically locked herself in a room with Canadian singer-songwriter Chantal Kreviazuk and co-wrote most of the tracks.
Right.
She was making a deliberate statement to the industry like, I write my own music, I am processing real complex emotions, and I can thrive without the producers who built my first album.
And critically, Under My Skin anticipated the massive emotional intensity of the emo pop movement right before it fully hit the mainstream. She was ahead of the cultural curve.
So she predicted the trend again?
She did. And the industry gamble paid off. It became her first album to reach #1 on the Billboard 200 in the U.S. She proved she was a credible artist, not a fluke.
Which makes her next artistic pivot completely mind-bending, because she spends this whole second album proving she has dark, credible alt-rock chops.
Yeah, she establishes that identity.
But then, by 2007, she does a radical 180-degree shift with her third album, The Best Damn Thing. The dark, brooding, emo aesthetic vanishes completely.
Like it never happened.
Right. Suddenly, she dyes her hair blonde with a bright pink streak. She's wearing heels. She's wearing hyper-feminine, colorful outfits. And she drops the lead single, Girlfriend, which is basically a bratty, upbeat, pop-punk cheerleader anthem.
It's so catchy, though.
It is. But why would she abandon the credibility she just fought so hard for?
Because for an established alternative artist who has already proven her dark, brooding credentials, the ultimate act of rebellion is to make unapologetic bubblegum pop.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, she didn't need to prove her angst anymore. She wanted to dominate the global charts. And the strategy behind Girlfriend is a masterclass in global pop architecture.
What do you mean?
She wasn't just relying on standard radio play. She recorded the chorus of Girlfriend in 8 different languages.
8.
8, including Mandarin, Spanish, French, and Japanese.
That is brilliant. You are literally engineering a song to remove any language barrier for international market.
Exactly, and the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Girlfriend was the most downloaded track worldwide in 2007, selling 7.3 million copies.
Unbelievable.
And the music video was the first video on YouTube to ever reach 100 million views. She essentially built the blueprint for modern digital virality.
But behind that massive global success, she was constantly fighting defensive battles. The more successful she became, the more the industry and the media tried to undermine her legitimacy.
It's an unfortunate pattern with young female artists.
Totally. You look at the sources for this deep dive, and it's just a constant string of people questioning her songwriting abilities.
It was a persistent, almost relentless theme. You see a clear pattern of industry heavyweights challenging her ownership of her work. The Matrix, that production trio she worked with on her first album, publicly claimed they were the main songwriters of her early hits.
That had to hurt.
And then later, Chantal Kreviazuk, who we just mentioned she co-wrote that entire second album with, publicly accused Avril of not writing her own songs.
It has to be exhausting to constantly have your collaborators turn around and try to rewrite the history of your success. Although it is worth noting that Chantal did eventually walk that accusation back, right?
She did. Chantal retracted the statement and publicly called Avril an accomplished songwriter.
Hmm.
But the challenges weren't just in the press, they were in the courts.
Oh, right, the lawsuit.
Yeah, a 70s power pop band called the Rubinoos actually sued her, claiming that the chorus of Girlfriend stole parts of their 1979 song, I Want to Be Your Boyfriend.
How do you even defend against something like that when you are at the center of the pop music world?
Well, the Rubinoos lawsuit was eventually settled out of court confidentially, which is very common in the industry to just avoid lengthy trials.
Right, just make it go away.
Exactly.
Yep.
But throughout all of this, Avril fiercely defended her writing abilities. She constantly reminded the press that she had been writing fully structured songs since she was 14 years old, long before she ever set foot in a New York or LA studio.
Didn't one of her producers step in to defend her during the lawsuit, too?
Yes. Her producer at the time, Dr. Luke, actually came to her defense during the Girlfriend controversy. He explained the musical mechanics behind the similarity, pointing out that the song uses standard, foundational pop-punk chord progressions.
Like stuff you'd hear anywhere in the genre.
Exactly. Progressions you'd find in a Blink-182 or Sum 41 track. He famously told the press, it's the Sex Pistols, not the Rubinoos.
Basically saying, yes, the songs sound similar because they are built on the exact same 3 chords that every punk band has used for 3 decades. You can't copyright a genre's foundation. So she's battling her producers, she's battling 70s rock bands, she's battling the media. But then we have to talk about her battle with the internet.
Oh, here we go.
Because as if her career wasn't chaotic enough, she somehow becomes the subject of one of the earliest, most bizarre internet conspiracy theories of all time. It is time to talk about Melissa.
Ah, yes, the Melissa phenomenon. It is such a fascinating case study in early internet culture.
If you are listening to this and you somehow missed this era of the internet, it is a wild rabbit hole. There is a persistent, fully fleshed out internet conspiracy theory that posits that Avril Lavigne actually died in 2003, right after the explosive success of her first album.
Right, and then what happened?
And the record label allegedly replaced her with a body double named Melissa Vandella.
What's incredible when you trace the sources back is that this entire theory originated purely as a sociological experiment.
Wait, it wasn't even meant to be real.
No. It started on a Brazilian blog that was specifically created to demonstrate how easily people will believe fabricated conspiracy theories on the internet if you present them with enough fake evidence.
But the irony is that it worked too well. The internet completely embraced it in earnest.
They really did.
And you can almost see why, based on what we talked about earlier. Her aesthetic shift from the baggy pants of album 1 to the goth punk of album 2 to the blonde pink cheerleader of album 3 was so visually jarring.
It was a lot of change very quickly.
Right. It's almost like people's brains found it easier to believe she was literally a different person than to accept that a young woman's style naturally evolves. People were on forums analyzing the shape of her jawline, comparing the placement of her freckles. They were bringing in handwriting experts.
It perfectly illustrates the intense, often absurd level of scrutiny she was under. The theory got so mainstream that interviewers were actually asking her about it on red carpets.
How do you even answer that?
Her response was usually just pure, bewildered confusion. She'd say, yeah, some people think that I'm not the real me, which is so weird. Like, why would they even think that?
It's the ultimate proof of cultural impact. When the internet collectively starts inventing massive lore about you, you have officially reached icon status. And it didn't even stop there.
No, the internet wasn't done with her yet.
There was another meme in 2007 about a fake Avril Lavigne song called Dolphins.
Right. The lyrics to this completely non-existent song just started propagating across dozens of lyric websites.
Just totally made up out of thin air.
Yep. Various indie bands even started recording cover versions of it and posting them online. But she never wrote, recorded, or even conceptualized a song called Dolphins. The internet literally willed a fake Avril Lavigne track into existence just through sheer repetition.
It's hilarious, but, the journey takes a very serious, very grounded turn from there. Fast forward through her continued success, and we arrive at a massive turning point in 2014.
A really difficult time for her.
She's just turned 30, she's a global superstar, and everything comes to a grinding halt due to a severe health crisis.
Yeah, she was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and it was an incredibly severe case.
How bad was it?
She revealed later that the physical toll was devastating. She was essentially bedridden for 5 straight months. It completely halted her career trajectory.
Oh, wow.
It was a period of intense physical pain and emotional uncertainty where she honestly didn't know she would ever make music again.
It is a terrifying reality check. But true to the resilience she showed fighting industry executives as a teenager, she channeled that deeply traumatic experience directly into her art.
Which resulted in some of her most honest work.
Right. In 2019, she releases her 6th studio album, Head Above Water. And the mechanics of this album are completely different. The pop-punk armor is gone.
Yeah, it's very stripped down.
The heavy eyeliner and the bratty attitude are stripped away. It's a softer acoustic pop rock album, and the title track is this raw, incredibly vulnerable ballad. It was directly inspired by the nights she spent fighting Lyme disease, literally feeling like she was drowning in her own body.
It is a profound moment of maturity in her catalog. It really shows her ability to strip back the persona and connect on a deeply human level.
Completely.
But what makes her career so dynamic is that she doesn't just stay in that quiet acoustic space. She has this innate ability to read the cultural room.
She always knows what's coming next.
Because by 2022, there is this massive mainstream resurgence of the very 2000s pop-punk sound she helped pioneer.
Yeah, a whole new generation of kids on TikTok are suddenly discovering baggy pants, heavy eyeliner, and power chords. So what does Avril Lavigne do?
She leans right back in.
She links up with Travis Barker, who is essentially the godfather of this modern pop-punk revival, signs to his label, DTA Records, and drops her 7th album, Love Sucks.
And it is a full-throttle return to her skate punk roots.
Oh, yeah. She's embracing the modern emo pop angst, collaborating with the new class of artists like Machine Gun Kelly and Youngblood.
It's as if she looked around, saw an entire industry trying to desperately emulate the sound she perfected in 2002, and just stepped up to the mic to say, "Hold my skateboard, let me show you how it's actually done."
It is a brilliant, triumphant, full-circle moment,
Yeah.
and it really forces us to look past the fake internet songs and the conspiracy theories and examine her actual tangible legacy.
Their influence is massive.
If we bring it back to that opening tension, how a country-singing kid from a town of 5,000 became this enduring icon, it's clear she wasn't just some fleeting early 2000s trend engineered by a label.
Not even close. She served as this vital, necessary bridge between the heavy 90s grunge alternative scene artists like Alanis Morissette and today's Gen Z alt-pop landscape.
She proved that you could combine the aggression of punk with the massive hooks of pop.
Exactly. And she paved the way for an entire generation of female artists to do the same without having to smile perfectly for the camera. You can trace her musical DNA through so many different genres today because she delivered a package of punk, pop, and skater culture that felt totally fresh and accessible.
You look at the massive artists dominating the culture right now, Billie Eilish, Olivia Rodrigo, Charli XCX, they all explicitly cite Avril as a foundational influence.
Even in the hip-hop world, which is wild.
Right. Emo rap stars like Lil Uzi Vert point to her aesthetic and attitude. Rico Nasty even named one of her musical alter egos Trap Lavigne.
It's true.
I mean, her early pop-punk vibe was so pertinent, it even directly inspired the styling for Lindsay Lohan's character in the 2003 movie Freaky Friday.
She just refused to be contained by the very labels that the industry used to make her famous.
Yeah.
She built her own mold, she capitalized on it, and then she smashed it whenever it started to feel restrictive.
Exactly. Which brings me to this final thought for you to chew on as we wrap up this deep dive. We've talked about how Avril Lavigne had to fight to prove she wasn't just a manufactured product, hiding her country roots while the industry figured out her punk image.
Right, it was a constant battle.
It leaves you wondering, in today's TikTok era, where authenticity is completely algorithm-driven and fans act like internet detectives, could an artist like Avril even exist today?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Or would the internet immediately sniff out the transition from small-town country singer to pop-punk princess before she ever even had the chance to record her first album? It makes you appreciate just how perfectly timed her specific brand of rebellion really was.
Definitely something to think about.
Thanks for listening to People L Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.